You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Pop myself out there. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today on this so far beautiful Friday morning here in upstate New York? We're near Saratoga. Things have calmed down with the track season over. Good to have everybody with us. Everybody watching us today on TGI Sports Talk's Facebook outlet, our YouTube outlet. We're live on National Streaming Sports on Roku. We're also, we'll share to all of the groups that we certainly enjoy their support, like Ralph Williams at RW Media, who does the Sports Corner every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern with Smoke and Jim Frazier, along with a lot of other content during the week. I guested on the show this past Tuesday. Had a great time with Ralph and Smoke and Jim. Also want to thank, of course, John Gonzalez and the Sports Authority. He's one of the best groups out there, along with Bottom Line Sports and Flo and the Gang. They do some great content with their podcast, by the way. Ken Krause at Golf Buds and Sports of All Sorts. DDH thumbs up. I know you're watching down on us, so thank you for that. And Bet US, as we'll play the ad at the end. Bet Us. I don't know why I keep saying Bet US. One of the main sponsors of National Streaming Sports. You can go to National Streaming Sports website. Go to NEESP.net, I believe, and click the link for Bet Us, and you can make any kind of wagers you want to make there. Do it responsibly, though, guys. I do it. I don't pretend I don't, but it's well within my means, and we do it for mostly fun. We had a great football game last night, which, again, we're going to talk a little bit about football with today's guest. By the way, real quick, let me thank last week's guest, Ernie DiGregorio, former standout at Providence and with the Buffalo Braves in the early 70s. Great interview, great reception, which I expect to have today for today's guest. He played at Dartmouth, was a three-time All-Ivy League, I should say. He's a college football Hall of Famer. He played, I want to say, 14 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals, went to 2 Super Bowls, and has endured a lot. And he's also got a book, which we'll talk about before I bring him in, Resilient by Nature. If I can, Reflections, I can't read the subtitle, which I always have a problem with. Reflections, we'll have Reggie help me out because my eyesight is going so bad, it's ridiculous. But great book. I found it myself last night on Kindle because I should have found it before. I like to get the books read before I do it. Just bought it on Kindle myself, and I'll be jiving into that because I need to start a new book this week. But with no further ado, we're going to bring in Mr. Reggie Williams. Good morning, Reggie. Great to have you with me today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Glad to be here. Wore my Dartmouth football shirt, so, one of those rare opportunities for someone repping the Ivy League.
It's awesome. I mean, again, it's funny. I guess I'll start there. I want to get into your childhood a little bit, just as a preamble, but there aren't a lot of, we don't know about, there's guys that have played from the Ivy League, but there aren't a lot of that many maybe there's more accomplished guys than I think about. Who are some of the other guys that stand out in your mind from the Ivy League?
Probably Jay Fiedler, who was a quarterback also from Dartmouth. Dartmouth also had a great place kicker in Nick Lowry. Calvin Hill was probably one of the greatest running backs.
Another good one.
From the Ivy League. Ed Marinero washed out of the NFL after having a great NFL career. That sort of helped us. Chicago Bears had a great defensive back named Dave Fensick.
Yeah.
And he was from Yale, and he was a wide receiver when I played against him. Dan Jiggets was a offensive lineman that played for the Bears from Harvard. So there's been a few.
Yeah, and a couple of decent quarterbacks. Fitzpatrick's made
yes.
He has 6 good games in a row, then signs a big contract, and then disappears for a while.
And played for 6 different teams in 2 years. So
there's another quarterback. Gary Danielson go to who? Was there a Detroit quarterback went to the Ivy League? Eric Hipple or Danielson? No, maybe I misread.
I'd have to research myself.
Yeah, I feel like there was, again, quarterbacks have been in short supply, but obviously there's a lot more really good NFL players than we thought about. I'll start there. You grew up in Flint, Michigan. And tell me about, you must have been a smart kid to get into Dartmouth. And I know you had some hearing issues as a child. I mean, did that impact I would think it impact your early education, if it will. How did that affect your early life?
Yeah, I think the thing that probably affected me early was the fact that, the year that I was born, 1954, was the year of the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which primarily, was won by Thurgood Marshall to ensure that all Americans had equal access to public education.
Yeah.
And knowing that I would have equal access, which is something my parents were gung-ho on, was impacted by the fact that I was born hearing impaired. But fortunately, Michigan School for the Deaf was in Flint, Michigan, where I was born and raised, and I was able to do both public schools and Michigan schools simultaneously. And my parents had always instilled in me the importance of academics. In fact, academics were much more important than sports. My accomplishment throughout my childhood was to do well enough academically to earn a full ride academic scholarship to the University of Michigan. And that's where I was going to school. I had planned my whole life I was going to be a doctor. And then Bo Schembecker, the head coach, the Hall of Fame head coach, came to my school and told me to my face that I wasn't good enough to be a Wolverine. And, he destroyed all of my aspirations. And I went home and told my dad, and my dad said, "Forget Bo. I'll get an extra job, and you get into Dartmouth College, you go there." And Dartmouth does not offer Ivy League scholarships. So my father had to pay a lot more. And so my determination with that chip on the shoulder from Bo Schembecker are all the ingredients I needed to exceed my expectations and everyone else's and become an All-American at Dartmouth College. So there is a way to turn negative circumstances to positive outcomes.
Interesting. It's funny because you got out in front of one of my questions was going to Dartmouth. Obviously, you had to go on if you got a scholarship, it was an academic scholarship, no athletic scholarships, as you mentioned. I was going to ask you if you had other offers, but you wanted to go to Michigan. Were there other opportunities besides Michigan and then ultimately Dartmouth?
Yeah, I had three stark contrasts in collegiate opportunities. Michigan was number one. Dartmouth was number two. My third safe choice was Albion College, which was a small liberal arts college in Albion, Michigan. If I'd have gone to Albion and made it to the NFL, I'd have been the only one, that had ever done that. But it was a good school, and I would have been happy to go there if worse came to worse. So I was fortunate that I was recruited heavily by Dartmouth, and I also was a wrestler. And the head freshman football coach, Jerry Burns, was also the wrestling coach. So I sort of got double recruited from Dartmouth, and that all paid off.
What part of the football program was he?
He was the head coach of the freshman team. At that time, 1976, freshmen weren't allowed to play on the varsity in the Ivy League. But you must remember that freshman season was the year that Archie Griffin broke out. And so there were a lot of freshmen who were able to play big-time football and really excel. And my future teammate, Archie Griffin, was head and shoulders with everybody.
I still say, and I get a lot of argument, there's been a lot of great college players. I still insist Archie Griffin is the best college football player of all time. He won 2 back-to-back Heisman trophies. That's all I have to say. No,
he's a great competitive player, but he's so humble. He would be the last person to really say that. He would give all the praise to his teammates, to the coaching staff. He really is an amazing character for a football player. I don't think there's a mean bone in him.
Archie's a guy I'd love to have on the show. Do you have any contact with Archie? I got to get in touch with Archie somehow. I'd love to have him on this show.
Well, he's a great guy. They just did a statue for him outside of the Rose Bowl, and then they replicated it, the statue outside of Ohio State Stadium. So the horseshoe. So
yeah.
That's it's an amazing recognition by Ohio State for all the contributions that Archie has made both on and off the football field.
Great player, and it sounds like a great person. Your playing career at Dartmouth, I mean, Jack, I'm going to say Jack's name. Try to be easy. Krolthamel, am I right? Krolthamel?
Jake Krauthamel, yes. Jake was my head coach. He followed Blackman, who went on to Illinois in the Big Ten after his success at Dartmouth. And then Jake Krauthamel went on to be the athletic director at Syracuse.
Yeah.
And he's responsible for the Carrier Dome and all the success that Syracuse has been enjoying coming out of the 2000 of this century.
What was his impact? I mean, I want to talk about a couple of things, but what was his impact on you as a football player? I mean, at 6'1", you played it. I'm going to say 6'1", 228 something. Today, you're tiny, right, as a linebacker. But back then, that's probably a pretty good size. But what was his influence on your career and maybe making you into the professional potential? I'm guessing at this point in your career, you don't have a lot of NFL aspirations, or maybe you do.
No, I had no NFL aspirations when I ended up at Dartmouth College. It was only until Jerry Burnt, on the very first day of practice, installed me as the captain and asked me to lead the team in calisthenics, which I'd never done before. That I started thinking about myself as a leader. I'd never been a captain in high school, and so with Jake Krauthamel was the person that came down to freshman practice. He's the one that moved me from running back because I wanted to be Jim Brown. He moved me from running back to middle linebacker. And that career change is, the biggest transformation I had in college. I thrived at middle linebacker and became one of the best linebackers in Ivy League history.
Actually, before I go on, let me go. I got a couple more questions but I got a couple questions before I lose track of these. So Ricky Patton came out of Southwestern Academy 2 years later in 1978, both good men from Flint. Do you remember Ricky Patton from the Flint area?
Of course I remember Rick. This is one of the great stories. And I think it's still true today that Ricky Patton and I are the only high school teammates that lined up against each other as adversaries in a Super Bowl. So that year, we were playing the Super Bowl in Pontiac, which is only 40 minutes away from our hometown of Flint, Michigan.
Right.
So one of us was going to go home with the Super Bowl ring, and the other person was going to go home with a bunch of regrets, and that person with the bunch of regrets was me.
Well, that's ironic. We'll get into a little more of that later, but I didn't realize that's a great story. And real quick, I guess before I lose track of this question, Chris wants to know also about the artwork you have up in the background. He says he thinks he sees a South African theme. Tell us about what you got going on there.
Oh, I collect art from wherever I've had the good fortune of travel. And yes, there is some artwork in my room from South Africa where I had the chance to meet and be a guest of Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Oh, that had to be an honor.
It was an honor, and it was a result of some legislation that I passed as a Cincinnati City Councilman. And this legislation was such that we prohibited our pension board from continuing to be the banker for South Africa. And so Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he flew to Cincinnati, wanted to meet with me. And I gathered my inner cabinet, and he basically told us that legislation was the straw that broke the camel's back, that they were going to let Nelson Mandela out of Robbins prison, and that they were going to have their first democratic election in South Africa. So
Wow.
of all the things that I accomplished in Cincinnati, nothing was more rewarding than the opportunity to be part of the change in leadership and democratic rule in the Republic of South Africa. I mean, the only thing that would have topped it off is if I would have won a Super Bowl. In both those two chances. But
Well,
in terms of making a difference on the world stage, the Cincinnati Bengals allowed me to do that, and I'm most appreciative.
I would say Super Bowls are awesome, but that is a pretty good place in history to be kind of part of, for sure.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Especially if you compare it to losing a Super Bowl. So you
Right. So Chris got me a little ahead of myself there. I was going to talk about that. We'll talk more about the city council stuff when we get to your Cincinnati career, which we'll get
the
to.
only thing I will say and
Yeah.
add to my artwork is that behind me, which you may or may, yeah, you can see behind my head in the black and white, is a rendition by the artist Ernie Barnes. Ernie Barnes was a former NFL player, but he was the artist behind JJ and Good Times, which is JJ's only redeeming value. So his artwork opened and closed the show. And the artwork that you see above me is one that he did for Sylvester Stallone when he was doing a mural for Rocky. And
the iconic one where him and Apollo are hitting each other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right there. And so he just sold at Christie's the highest auction piece of art a year ago, $15.3 million
Wow.
for Sugar Shack, which was a depiction of a party scene in his hometown of Durham, North Carolina. And it is, it was on the album cover for Marvin Gaye. And so it just became a part of pop music history.
That's pretty cool. So the only I would take this away from this conversation, because that's all tremendous stuff I never would have thought I'd hear today. But I take away from this conversation, you didn't like Good Times, but you like the art that opened and closed the show.
I could not stand JJ. I thought he was such an idiot. He was such a poor role model for young black people. I mean,
Yeah,
but
that's a great point.
I mean, Kid Dynamite. I mean, who goes around, saying, I'm Kid Dynamite? He was
It's
a
one of those
buffoon,
shows that
but,
comes
but his artwork redeemed him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm getting old, and I watch all these cozy TV. I watch all these sitcoms from the 70s or whatever, and one will come off, and there's a few that come out, and my wife goes, "Would you please turn that off, because it's like dated." That's just one of them. Mama's Family. It's just crazy. Anyway, back to Dartmouth. You obviously mature as a football player, and I'm sure a person at Dartmouth under your coach's tutelage. And what other influences were there? And when did you start to realize maybe there was some NFL potential in your future?
It probably wasn't until my sophomore year. I had a good, freshman year, but we only played 6 games.
Right.
And they're against other freshman teams or other junior varsity teams. Dartmouth College at that time was a powerhouse. They had won, in my freshman year, they had won their 4th straight Ivy League championship. And so my sophomore year, when I'm joining the varsity, I arrived at camp injured. I had been hit by a car from my off season. I was working at Fisher Body. My dad had got me a job to help make some money to pay for my Dartmouth education. And I got hit by a car on lunch break. And so by the time I got back to Dartmouth, I could not practice. And they were icing my leg, and I wasn't able to play until just sparingly the 2nd game of the season, then a little bit more in the 3rd game. And then in the 4th game of the season, we're 0-3.
Yeah.
And they put me in an outside linebacker, a position I never played before. And we were able to win, but I did not have a great game. But our middle linebacker Pat Stone got hurt that game. And so they put me in at middle linebacker, and that was it. The next game, we were playing undefeated Harvard in Harvard, and I had the game of my entire career. And we were able to have 4 goal line stands, and we beat Harvard at Harvard, and we ended up not losing another game that entire season and won the Ivy League for the 5th straight championship. So at that point in time, the whole mythology of looking adversity in the face and saying, we got this, that really came to fruition that sophomore year, and it's where I, was named All Ivy as a sophomore, and all the hype began that ultimately led to the Cincinnati Bengals drafting me in the 3rd round 2-3 years later.
When we talk about the Ivy League then and the Ivy League now, I have to believe that NIL, transfer portals, and things like that have hurt the Ivy League from a sporting standpoint, because kids who are academically eligible to do that, if they're from impoverished families or whatnot, then they're likely to go somewhere they might put some money in their pocket. No, and it hurts the Ivy League. What do you think about that?
No, I agree with you. NIL has changed the whole landscape of college sports. I mean, it's forced the biggest schools in the nation to consolidate.
Yeah.
And so, what leagues, and conferences that we grew up with, they're all been basically dismantled in favor of following the money train, the gravy train, with all of these broadcast contracts. So that having been said, every year college football, for some reason, gets more and more exciting.
It is a great
something
game
about the game that always allows for new drama, new superstars, new offensive, new defensive, new stories that are being told in so many different ways. So, and this past opening college football season was no exception. There were just some great games when no great games were even expected.
Yeah, I've said this for years now, Reggie, and it sounds like you agree with me that as great as the NFL game can be and the talent there is obviously unquestionable, the Saturdays are better from an excitement standpoint than Sundays because of the energy level in the stadiums, the bands, the fans, game day being there, and all this. It to me, Saturdays are just it's wall to wall excitement from 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the morning.
It really is, and you add to that the importance of alumni, and the fact that it's not just fans in the stands. There's a whole family, legacy that's tied up in someone having a seat to some of these big games. And so, I mean, that's the one thing about pro games. You don't think about, the parents of the fans in the stands. Whereas with football, it's all about legacy. And in many cases, players who become teammates in the NFL were adversaries in college. And so there's a lot of camaraderie that exists, right now between players and their college loyalties.
Do you think, going back to the NL for a second, knowing your situation with Bo Schembechler at Michigan, but let's just assume that Bo Schembechler wanted you. Well, let's say he didn't, because you would have gone to Michigan. So I wanted my question to be basically, if you had other opportunities, and it was today's rules, and they were going to give you whatever, a couple $100,000 even in NIL money, do you think you would have chosen that over the Ivy League education?
I would like to believe that I would have chosen an Ivy League education, but there's a part of me that said, wow, Hawaii. Hawaii would be a bad place to experience 4 years of your college experience. and I did end up going one term to San Diego, University of California, San Diego. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, that was beautiful, beautiful campus right in La Jolla. So, but I will say, Dartmouth is the one that exposed me to that. So hopefully I would have made the same decision.
You probably had a better chance of getting drafted in the NFL out of Dartmouth than out of Hawaii. I'm just saying.
That's probably true. Probably true. Even though there's some great Samoan players.
There are
Players that have played out of Hawaii.
It seems like those kids all go to BYU in Utah, though. The good ones are in BYU in Utah, not at Hawaii.
Yeah, and Washington too. I mean, that's where my teammate Jack Thompson, I think Washington State, he was a Cougar. So they also have a pipeline. Yeah,
for sure. Excellent point. So anyway, you play through your career, a very distinguished career, which later on you were elected into the College Football Hall of Fame, which had to be a great honor for you, among obviously a bunch of others. Now that I'm finding out some of these stories, when you get drafted, when the draft comes, you feel like you're getting drafted that day. I know there was a lot more. What was there, 17 rounds or something? I don't know at that point.
Yeah, 17 rounds.
Yeah.
No, I had been lied to. J.I. Albrecht, the notorious and legendary scout for the Dallas Cowboys, had told me that the Dallas Cowboys were going to draft me in the first round. And that was primarily a negotiating ploy to prevent me from signing with the Toronto Argonauts in the Canadian Football League, who had drafted me in the first round.
Uh-huh.
They flew me up to Toronto. Anthony Davis escorted me all around town in his Rolls Royce. I'd have been living large, and they still offered me hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Really?
And I remember getting a call from Cincinnati late in the day. And by that time, I thought they were in the 7th or 8th round, but I was drafting the 3rd. So that draft day was real slow. And so they drafted me. And from that moment on, I didn't even think about Toronto anymore. I wanted to play in the NFL. My hero growing up was Jim Brown. I really didn't know the Cincinnati Bengals. As a team, I knew that they had, been in the playoff for the very first time the year before, but they were a relatively young franchise that I didn't grow up with. And it gave me an opportunity to really, make my mark on, Cincinnati Bengal football.
Were you a Brown? I mean, you're a Jim Brown fan. Were you a Browns fan as well? I mean,
I was a Jim Brown fan and a Browns fan. I remember my rookie year. The first time we played in Cleveland, I had to come off the bench because the starting right outside linebacker, Ron Pritchard, had hurt himself in the Saturday walkthrough. And so they decided to start Glenn Cameron, the number 1 drafted inside linebacker from Florida. They put him at outside linebacker because they didn't think the rookie Ivy Leaguer was ready. And after Glenn was unable to, make some of the tackles in the open field that he needed to make against the likes of Greg Pruitt, they had nothing to lose but to put me in the game. And I played scared, but I played great. And I ended up playing well enough that game to secure a starting job, and ended up starting for the next 14 years for the Cincinnati Bengals, and led the team in tackles my freshman year. So I ended up in the right place at the right time, and enjoyed a long Cincinnati Bengal career.
You did. That's a long career, and I know that there's some downside to it too, which we'll get to. Now, so being a Browns fan, you only missed Coach Paul Brown by maybe a year. Or was it a year you would have missed him by?
No, I missed him by 1 year. He gave up coaching the year that I arrived. That's when they made the fateful decision to hire Bill Tiger Johnson, who was the offensive line coach, as the head coach. And in doing so, he bypassed the offensive coordinator, Bill Walsh. who then
He
quit.
did okay.
And yeah, he said, okay. And he ended up being hired by the San Francisco 49ers. And we ended up losing 2 Super Bowls to Bill Walsh. And during my 14-year career, in the 6 times I played against San Francisco, we never won, including one game when we were up by 4 points. We had the ball with 3 seconds to go in the clock, and we lost that game. So I'm going to tell you, there's something about the Bill Walsh curse, which is real.
Yeah. I mean, you must sit back and think sometimes, what if history had been different and Bill Walsh had been named the Bengal head coach? I mean, what are your vision? You think about it. What are the visions that you have of your career and the Bengals success if Bill Walsh had been given that job?
You know, you assume that, you know, we would have enjoyed the Super Bowls that San Francisco ended up enjoying, but you just never know.
Right.
And in large part because I think that him going to San Francisco, the reason he went, created a chip on his shoulder. And it was that chip on my shoulder when Bo Schembechler said I wasn't good enough to be a Wolverine. That was the big spark plug in my success at Dartmouth. So, you know, you never know if not being passed over by the Cincinnati Bengals, not the chip on the shoulder that facilitated all of Bill Walsh's success. But he was a great head coach. He was a great innovator, and obviously well respected by football pundits everywhere.
With that said, the guys you did play for, I mean, what were your relationships with? I know Bill Johnson, we said, took over the team. You had some moderate success, 10-4, 8-6. I know it wasn't so good when he left. Homer Rice was there for a year. Forrest Gregg comes in and gets you guys to a Super Bowl. And then later on, Sam White, who also got you to Super Bowl. What were your relationships with these guys, good and bad?
No, I had a great relationship with all of my coaches. Even Homer Rice, he was there for a short period of time, but he was very cerebral as a coach. And, you know, I probably my least favorite coach was Bill Tiger Johnson. I remember he, in my second year, like I said, my rookie year, I had led the team in tackles. I was made the NFL All-Rookie team. And when I came back to my second year, he benched me. He benched me for Ron Pritchard and he did it on the field without any warning.
Yeah.
And in front of the whole team, he basically said that a veteran can't lose their starting job through injury. Well, that sounds logical, but still, talk to me. You know, I'm after the great, you know, rookie year, I would expect, you know, the courtesy of someone, you know, not discounting everything I did, but instead doing it. So that was a bad day. And I ended up regaining my starting job only because Ron Pritchard got hurt again. And so they had to put me back up in the lineup. I think it affected the whole team. And, you know, we dropped from being a playoff contender to just being an average team.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bill didn't last but another year, and then he was gone. So he lost the leadership of the team. I'm not saying it's because of me. There were other things that he did, but what he did to me really was not good.
Well, you made the all-rookie team. I mean, it's like you just kind of went out there and, you know, filled in okay. You had a really good rookie year.
And the way he did it, once again, he did it on the field in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And with no respect, no courtesy, no understanding. I mean, he was a former player. You know, he was an offensive lineman, so he should have known that something like that. And I've got to look at my teammates. I got to look at the starting unit in the eye, and you know, that wasn't something that I enjoyed. But that having been said, Forrest Gregg was my favorite coach. You know, my favorite coach growing up was Vince Lombardi, and the fact that Forrest Gregg was the apple in the eye of Vince Lombardi. and that he himself, was one of the primary building blocks for the great success that the Green Bay Packers had. And that was definitely something I wanted to emulate. And I can guarantee you, during the freezer bowl, minus 59 degrees below zero.
Remember that game?
The fact that Forrest Gregg was our head coach is the reason that we were a stand-up team. And we beat the San Diego Chargers to earn the right to play in Super Bowl 16, our first championship opportunity.
Real quick, going back to Bill Johnson, did you hear Bo Schembechler in your head all over again when that was happening?
It was that same sort of old school, ideology. There was something that Bo Schembechler saw in me that reminded him of something he didn't want to be a part of his program. I don't know what it was, okay? Because when I think about, when I finally did get to the Ivy League, Archie Griffin, for all of the success that he enjoyed, he was a little guy.
Yeah.
So you couldn't say it was based upon size. My roommate at the Hula Bowl was Gordy Bell, who was the Michigan running back, and he was a little guy. And I'm looking at him saying, but why would Bo Schembechler have picked these guys who were significantly smaller than me?
Right.
And say that I wasn't good enough to be with these guys' teammates. And then obviously I ended up being Archie Griffin's teammate for 7-8 years. And so it is significant, how, coaches impact, the ethos of their players. It's not just my story, it's happened all over.
Yeah.
And you always hear, fortunately, about the good stories, positive inspiration. But there are those stories that are the opposite. And that's why the NIL has become so big, because players now have more leverage. If they don't like how they're being treated, they can move. They get paid for it. So it really is pretty, pretty impactful what this new legislation has allowed the college game to become. And the thing about it still, I'll go back to my earlier point, and yet the game continues to thrive. It continues to be exciting. It continues to develop more storylines. And so that's one of the amazing things about college football. It's just always something new every single week. And you expect upsets, and yet, you follow your teams and you bet on them, hopefully with no upset. So
right.
I'm not a bettor. I never have been a bettor. But I know the allure of being part of the game because you've got some skin in the game.
I enjoy a little skin in the game myself. And I've been a big, to your point about the games themselves and the storylines, for the last few years, I've been a big, very loud opponent of all of this change. I don't like the realignment. I don't like NIL. I don't like the transfer portal, the way it's done. There should be options for kids to move around. Don't get me wrong. But not the way it's being done now. But I've come to the conclusion nothing's going to change. I can't turn the clock back to 1982, right? But so I have to embrace that. And I've said, as long as I feel that same excitement on Saturday, then I'll just learn to live with this. And so far, it's good. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, the salary disparity in the NFL is even worse. I could not really imagine, a teammate making $20-25 million more a year than I was making, because all 22 jobs on the football field are so critically important. And, you need these players that are being paid up just $1 million a year at the offensive line to protect, these, $100 million quarterbacks. And the two go hand in hand. But, that's the way the game has become, and it's not going to change. The disparity is going to get bigger and bigger. You're going to have players making $100 million and their teammates making $5 million.
Yeah.
And it's going to be it's going to be very important for leadership in the locker room to really, balance that very unbalanced situation.
As this team gets better through the early part of your career, and Forrest Gregg gets there, and I mean, were there big culture changes? Actually, Chris brings up a question here about your rookie season at 22, and I think coming out of the Ivy League, the mature rookie is probably a good. I think you're probably mature than some guys coming from some other schools. But the average age of the roster, I'm not sure where he gets the number, but I'll trust it at 27. How loose was that locker room? What was your relationship like with the veterans in that era at your age?
Oh, and in fact, when I made the Cincinnati Bengals team, I was 21. I didn't turn 22 until my September 19th birthday. So he is correct. I mean, there were a lot of more mature players on that team than there are now. And, the veterans, all they wanted was performance. And the veterans that supported me, Ken Riley being number one. He was the cornerback. He just recently was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Long overdue, right?
Yeah, long overdue. And he's someone that was really supportive of me and would talk to me. I remember early my rookie year, I got blindsided by a wide receiver. It's the only time, you get hit, you don't see it coming. And you look at, 1 minute you're running, next minute you see your feet over your head. You say, uh-oh, this is going to look bad on film. And the only way that you can really protect yourself is that you've got to have great communication with your quarterback. And so Kenny had warned me, but I didn't hear him. And so after that play, I could hear Ken Riley in my sleep. And so I never got blindsided again. And they'll look out for you. And so that's the way that I became, as I matured and played long and long, you look out for the younger guys. Because the better prepared they are, the better they play, and the better they play, the better we do. And so that's always been a consistent theme of every single team that I played on.
There were a lot of other young guys. Ken Anderson was still a pretty young player at the time. You talked about Archie Griffin, Isaac Curtis,
yes,
great player. As this team matures and you play in the Super Bowl in 81,
81
right?
season, yes.
Yeah, 81. Some are still there. Archie, I think Archie's gone by then, but a lot of them were still there.
Archie's there still.
He was still there in that first Super Bowl?
Yeah, Archie was there in 91, and he was joined by Pete Johnson.
I remember Pete Johnson.
His teammate at Ohio State. So we had the Ohio State running backfield. And he was the starter for us for Super Bowl 16.
Yeah, I want to talk about, you talked about Ken Riley waiting so long to get in the Hall of Fame. I think one guy I can think of off that team I know belongs, and I want to talk about yourself in a second too. Ken Anderson, to me, belongs in the Football Hall of Fame. And I do not understand how Ken Anderson is not in the Hall of Fame.
I don't understand why Ken Anderson's not in the Hall of Fame either. I mean, you look at how long Dan Fouts has been in the College Football Hall of Fame, but our Super Bowl 16 season, we played Dan Fouts and the San Diego Chargers twice when they were at their prime. I mean, that was when, he achieved all of his notoriety. And we beat him both times that year. And Kenny Anderson played phenomenal in both games, outplayed Dan Fouts in both games. And yet, for some reason, Dan Fouts is, he's become, a graybeard in the Hall of Fame. And Kenny Anderson has been on the outside looking in. And that's really been unfortunate. He definitely deserves, Willie Anderson deserves induction in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Isaac Curtis deserves induction. Lamar Parrish deserves induction. All players, that really contributed to launching this franchise and making it a very competitive entity in the rugged landscape of NFL, hierarchy.
Yeah. I sense you're probably a bit of a modest guy, Reggie. What about your own Hall of Fame chances? You were played a long time in the NFL when the NFL was a lot different than it is today, and we'll get into your struggles too physically. But what are your own thoughts? Because you were a big cog in 2 Super Bowl teams. I know they didn't win, but you were a big cog there and keeping that team competitive year after year.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up. I certainly know the things that I've done that have uniquely differentiated, my contributions from my peers. And yes, there are certain things that put me in the top 5, top 10 of any linebacker in NFL history. I have 24 forced fumbles. I have 23 recovered fumbles.
That's a record, isn't it? The 23 recovered.
It's the number 1 for the Bengals for a defensive player.
Bengals.
But it's it's in the top 5 in the National Football League. And so there are a number of other things, but I'm satisfied with my individual recognition. The one thing that I would look forward to is being in the Cincinnati Bengals Ring of Honor. I love playing for the Bengals. I love representing the city, both as a player and as a city councilman. Being a city councilman when we were playing in Super Bowl 23.
While you were a player, has there ever been a player that was on a city council in the NFL before you or since you?
No, there wasn't. And I tell you, one of the things that really fired me up in getting ready for Super Bowl 23, which I had probably my best game in my NFL career in my 13th year, was when they introduced us. They introduced me as starting at right outside linebacker, number 57, Councilman Reggie Williams.
That's cool.
That fired me up so much because the whole year, Cincinnati hadn't announced me as a councilman, nor the team had announced me as a councilman, and it only took the Super Bowl, in front of a worldwide audience, that that was put together in an introduction, and it was something that really fired me up.
I'll bet.
Contribute to my best game I think I played ever as a Cincinnati Bengals player.
Was it hard to balance those two things? Because obviously you have to spend a lot of time on both. Well, certainly a football career, and councilman's I know probably was a part-time gig, but that's a part-time gig that turns into a full-time gig.
It was a part-time gig, yes. In that, you had city council meetings Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday was the day that we installed our defense. And that was the day that Sam Weish allowed me to miss practice so that I could go to city council. And so I would go to both on Monday. I'd go to because Monday is when we look at the film. And I'd be able to go and look at the film, and then by the afternoon I'd be in city council for committee meetings, and then Tuesday was the team's day off, and I'd be in city council meetings for committee meetings as well, and then we'd vote and bring legislation to the table on Wednesday, and then I'd go to practice Thursday, Friday, and play the game on Sunday. So, I had a great family. My wife, Mariana, was real, supportive, and, she was a tremendous partner in taking care of the kids. As I had, at that time, I had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old.
That's another job.
But it's something I would, once again, because of, what Archbishop Desmond Tutu, told me, I cherish every moment that I spent on city council, even some of the defeats. I remember one of the first things I wanted to accomplish was getting these weapons of war out of school.
Yeah.
And I remember, going after gun legislation, and for the first time, getting negative feedback from Cincinnati Bengals fans. I mean, the first time I got called the N-word was because I was coming in between some of our fans and their guns, and they had more allegiance to their guns than the players, and that was shocking to me.
Yeah.
But, it was something I had to learn firsthand.
Crazy. Did you have aspirations of going further in politics, or was that just that was fun? And
No, I had a real opportunity. I was approached by the governor of Ohio to be his lieutenant governor and run with them. And if I had done that, then all of the possibilities of being a lieutenant governor, or being known statewide to be the next governor, was definitely all in play. And I made the decision to resign from city council when I was offered the position to be general manager of the New York, New Jersey Knights of the World League of American Football. And that was, the time where the NFL was exporting the sport of football to Europe.
right.
And so all the success that the NFL is enjoying now with games in England and in Great Britain, and now this year in Brazil,
Yeah.
was all because of the World League of American Football. And we created a cross the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean rivalry with the London Monarchs. And the London Monarchs, for some reason, always beat the New York, New Jersey Knights. And so that's one of the reasons that the British embraced, American football, is because their team was beating the Americans at their own game. And while it wasn't planned to work as one of the ingredients to launch the sport, it definitely helped, because the London Monarchs ended up being champions, and everyone, no matter what the nationality, we all love champions.
Yeah. And there was a few guys who got their NFL chance because of that league as well.
Absolutely,
They may not have.
did.
Yeah. Go back to your Cincinnati career a little bit. I know it's hard to which was one of those Super Bowl losses tougher to take than the other?
Oh, definitely. Super Bowl 23 was tougher, only because if we would have won, I would have retired right after the game.
Yeah.
It would have been the conquering hero, going back to Cincinnati as a city councilman, and look what I've delivered to the city, a ring for all time, all these players, which will now be legendary. And the fact that it ended, with just, seconds to go on the clock, and we were up, and even more devastating was the fact that our defensive coordinator, Dick LeBeau, called a new defense in the final drive that immortalized Joe Montana. That new defense put me on the sideline. So I had to watch
Oh, no.
the nightmare unfold. I mean, it was just horrific that they were able to cover so much ground in so little time and just dash our Super Bowl dreams. And, they didn't need to win that game. They had enough. They already had rings. So they didn't have to take my one ring. But that game did hurt.
Bill Walsh would have overshadowed you again, because he retired after that game too, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he stepped away after that game.
I'm not sure if he retired after that game.
I thought
I
it was.
remember that, but it could have been. It could have been. But
I'm pretty sure that was his last. I'm pretty sure that was his last game. It was a great football game. It was certainly one of the better Super Bowl games.
It was a great game.
Yeah. Who are some of the other? Who was the best teammate you felt you played with? It's maybe not the best player, the best teammate.
Oh, Ken Riley. Ken
Yeah.
Riley was the only player that I played with that was also in the same fraternity. He was an Alpha Phi Alpha alum, as well as I was an Alpha Phi Alpha. So there were times that we shared, certain sentiments. One of which was the poem Invictus. Invictus, which is, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. in the fell touch of circumstance. I have not winced nor cried aloud under the bludgeon of chance. My head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And that was the relationship that Ken Riley and I had.
Yeah.
We both shared the same poetry. We played side by side for 10 years. And I cherished all of his demeanor. He was always cool, calm, and collected. We always sat next to each other on the bench, and we were roommates on the road. So he was just a great teammate. And I had the opportunity, like I said, to play with him for most of my career.
What's your greatest memory on the field yourself?
Oh, so many good memories. I really can't. I have to couple them with the game. I mean, I would, probably, the first play I made coming off the bench against Cleveland, where, I had to distinguish myself by tackling Greg Pruitt in the opening field, put up or shut up kind of moment. If I would have missed that tackle, of the most, elusive running back in the NFL that season, if I'd have missed that tackle, I'd probably been back on the bench.
Yeah.
I had to make it. So if there was one play, was that. But there were many plays, after that.
That's great.
And so it's all, for me, related. I can't even imagine having a great game, a great play in a game that we lost. So all those games we lost are completely off the table. And I guess the only one I will say, now that I had a moment to think about it, was in the Freezer Bowl. Only because it's minus 59 degrees below zero. And we're playing the San Diego Chargers, and the winner goes to Super Bowl 16. And in the third quarter, San Diego is, after getting warm in the locker room at halftime, they came out in the second half and they drove down the field to our territory. And I called the first on the field audible of our zone blitz defense that I'd ever called with Ross Browner. We did an X stunt, and I was able to sneak in undetected by Chuck Muncie, their huge all-pro running back, and hit him straight in the chest, forced a fumble, which Ross Browner recovered, ending that drive. And that basically, won us the game in the pickup, because the Chargers never scored for the second half. And our team had 4 turnovers. So I would say that would probably be, that single game. But, in my NFL career, I fortunately had a chance to play over 2,000 plays. So there's a lot of plays to choose from.
Yeah, that's a lot. Now, injuries played a big part. And I want to get into let you talk about your book a little bit. I know that you go into a lot of what you've been through in your playing career, and certainly after 24 surgeries after your playing career, almost, and a continuous fight, it seems, to keep your leg. Tell us, when did the injuries, when did that begin as a player? And tell us a little bit about your struggles and about the book itself, Reggie.
Well, this will probably be my last point, Keith, because, so it'd be a good point to sort of end on. Is that, my first injury occurred, my first surgery was actually after my 4th season. And it was a simple cartilage tear, but at that time, the technology was such that they treated a cartilage tear as a full-blown knee. And so they would open the knee up and take all the cartilage out And so basically for the remaining 9 years, I played bone on bone. And that's what created the problem. And so it was during my Disney career that I really couldn't walk anymore without extreme pain. And they did a double knee replacement because I was born bow leg. And so you can't have one straight leg and one bow leg.
Makes sense.
And so in that regard, they did the surgery. And I remember that whole off season, I never ran. I rode my bicycle, and I rode my bike everywhere. And I didn't know if the surgery was successful until the first day of training camp. And I was able to run and able to run effectively. And so when I started having my knee really go downhill was during my Disney career, and it got to the point that I really couldn't walk anymore. It was in a lot of pain every single day. And then I went in to get the knee replacement, and my right knee got infected. And that resulted in osteomyelitis, which is, an infection of the bone. And I had to have several bone grafts and other surgeries to save my knee from amputation. And it's been a challenge ever since. But right now, I'm very fortunate that I'm probably, even though my right leg is 3.5 inches shorter and it doesn't bend, I'm not in any pain. And so I can walk comfortably. And I really have a lot of doctors have to thank. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. They really have put me in a position to, enjoy my latter years pain-free.
You can get the book, guys, on Amazon. I got it on Kindle. You can get hardcover, soft cover. I'm sure other places. Rick is asking, are there autograph versions of the book? Is there some place they can go to get autograph versions?
Yeah, there's a website that have Reggie Williams that is set up specifically for returning autograph books. I'll try to get that information to you after the show. Okay.
I appreciate it. I'll post it to my social media pages for sure for you.
Sounds good.
And I know you got to run. If you got time, real quick, couple questions I didn't get to from these guys. Rick wanted to make a point that the poem you read, Jerry Kramer gave in his Hall of Fame speech, which is an interesting point, and you may have already been aware of.
I wasn't aware of that. It's great to hear.
Right? That's
the kind of thing that I would have done.
Yeah, that is awesome. And
Jerry
Danny
Kramer's a great institution. So it's great to know.
Great player for sure. Danny Fuller out in California. Welcome, Danny. Danny wants to let you know that in the dictionary, the definition of stud is Reggie Williams, not Jerry Kramer. Reggie Williams. So there's a nice compliment for you.
Compliment. Thank you.
I want to let you go here for sure. And I'm going to ask you, because I know Chris Fgrave always asks this last question, and I'll throw it out there since he hasn't put it up there. What's Reggie reading today? What music does he listen to?
Oh, I love music. And so my son, Julian Williams, he has started making more music. He's an MMA fighter and coach. One of the top MMA gyms here in the state of Florida is called Fusion XL. So I'm listening to his music. And but if you're gonna talk to my music, I mean I'm a Motown guy. So I was born and raised in Flint. So Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Marvin Gaye,
cool.
Aretha Franklin, all of that genre of music is what I love. And then we made the very first Super Bowl anthem, in 1982 when we got to Super Bowl 16, we collaborated with the R&B group Midnight Star to do Bengals #1. Let me tell you, it's better than the Chicago Bears Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yeah.
If we would have won the game, Bengals #1 would have been the pop culture song of the 80s instead of the Super Bowl Shuffle. So winning solves a lot of problems.
It's sure. History's written by the victors, right? And that's kind of, I guess that's a great example. I know there's a couple other questions, but I'm not going to hold you up too much, Reggie. I know you got to get going. So I really appreciate the time you spent with us. We're going to put the book, and if you send me that link, I'll certainly get that up on the website as well. I appreciate the time you spent with me, and I wish you good luck going forward.
Thanks, Keith. I enjoyed our walk down memory lane. It was great. I enjoyed it very much.
A lot of fun. Thanks again, and good luck. Have fun with football this weekend.
Yeah, the Bengals will start their season, at home. So they're going to wear all orange. So
yeah,
I'm not necessarily in love with it. They've got to win for me to fall in love with it.
I think you're going to wear out my Patriot team this weekend, unfortunately. So we won't talk too much about that. Thanks again, guys. I want to thank my guest, Reggie Williams. I want to thank all you guys for watching, and everybody that will watch after we post this in the groups and whatnot. Tremendous show today. Tremendous input from you guys as always. And we'll be back at 3 o'clock with the Major League Baseball update. We'll see you Sunday with the Stream of Conscience as Keith Engle, or a one-on-one with Keith Engle and my guest Reggie Williams. Have a great Friday afternoon, guys.